The massive alien warship Stellar Dawn moved through space like a wounded animal. Its hull, once gleaming silver and blue, now showed dark scorch marks and twisted metal where enemy weapons had found their mark. Inside the ship, warning lights flashed red across every corridor, and the constant hum of failing systems filled the air with an ominous drone. Captain Corveth stood on the bridge, scaled green hands gripping the command rail so tightly that his claws left marks in the metal. The Saurid officer had commanded warships for over 30 years, but he had never faced a situation like this. Around him, his crew worked frantically at their stations, their reptilian faces showing the strain of the past 3 days. "Captain, the quantum drive core temperature is rising again," reported his navigation officer, her voice tight with worry. "We're losing power to the main engines." Corveth's yellow eyes narrowed as he studied the holographic display floating above the command center. The three-dimensional image showed their ship's vital systems, and too many sections glowed angry red. The quantum drive that powered their faster-than-light travel was failing. The main engines were operating at only 60% capacity, and their defensive shields flickered on and off like a dying light bulb. "Chief Engineer Thex, report to the bridge immediately," Corveth commanded through the ship's communication system. Within minutes, a tall crystalline being materialized on the bridge. Dex's body was made of living crystal that normally glowed with a soft blue light, but now the light was dim and flickering, showing his exhaustion and stress. The crystal being had been working non-stop for 72 hours, trying to repair their damaged systems. "Captain, I have tried everything," Thex said, his voice ringing like wind chimes in a storm. "Our diagnostic computers show 17 different system failures, but when we fix one problem, 2 more appear. The quantum resonance patterns make no sense. Energy flows are completely wrong, but I cannot find the source of the disruption." Corveth felt his stomach tighten. Thex was one of the best engineers in the Galactic Trade Federation fleet. His crystalline species had been building starships for over 2,000 years. If Thex could not fix their problems, who could? "About the backup systems?" Corveth asked. "Also failing, sir. Whatever is wrong with our main systems is spreading through the entire ship like a disease. Our repair nanobots cannot identify the problem. Our quantum scanners show nothing unusual. Even our artificial intelligence systems are giving us conflicting information." Thex's crystal body dimmed further. "Captain, I believe our ship is dying, and I do not know how to save it." The bridge fell silent, except for the constant beeping of warning alarms. Corveth looked around at his crew. These were some of the finest officers in the galaxy. His weapons officer was a brilliant Andromedan, whose species had mastered energy physics 3 millennia ago. His communications expert belonged to the Insectoid Hive Collective. His natural ability to process multiple data streams simultaneously made them perfect for managing complex ship systems. His pilot was a Centaurian, part of a race known throughout the galaxy for their precise control of spacecraft. Yet all of their advanced knowledge and sophisticated technology could not solve their current crisis. "Sir," called out the communications officer, her multiple eyes focused on her control panel. "Hey, I'm detecting a human space station approximately 2 light hours away, New Haven Station, according to their identification signals." Several crew members made sounds of disgust. Humans were barely tolerated in most parts of the galaxy. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, making them infants compared to the ancient civilizations that dominated space. Their technology was primitive, their ships were slow and clumsy, and their understanding of advanced physics was laughable. "Humans," muttered the weapons officer. "What could those primitives possibly do to help us?" Corveth had to admit he felt the same way. Humans used chemical rockets to reach orbit when his people had been using anti-gravity systems for centuries. Human computers were barely more advanced than simple calculators compared to the quantum processing systems that ran Saurid technology. Human medicine was so basic that most galactic species considered it little better than ancient superstition. But as another alarm began sounding, and the lights on the bridge flickered ominously, Corveth realized he was running out of options. His ship was stranded in enemy territory, his crew was exhausted, and his engineer had given up hope. In 6 hours, their life support would begin failing. In 12 hours, they would all be dead. Communications? Send a distress signal to New Haven Station, Corveth ordered. The bridge erupted in shocked protests. Captain, surely you cannot be serious, said his second-in-command. Asking humans for help would be humiliating. What would the High Command think? The High Command will think nothing if we are all dead, Corvath replied coldly. Send the signal. 20 minutes later, a response came back from the human station. The voice that spoke through their communication system was rough and casual. Nothing like the formal protocols used by civilized species. Stellar Dawn, this is New Haven Station. We received your distress call. We can offer basic repair services and supplies. Our chief mechanic says he can take a look at your problems, but he'll need to bring his team aboard your ship. The idea of primitive humans crawling around his sophisticated starship with their crude tools was almost unbearable. But the alternative was watching his crew die as their ship slowly fell apart around them. New Haven Station, permission granted. We will prepare Docking Bay 3 for your repair team. As he gave the order, Corveth wondered if he was making the biggest mistake of his career. How could humans, with their basic technology and limited understanding, possibly fix problems that had stumped the galaxy's most advanced engineers? But with his ship dying and his options exhausted, he had no choice but to find out. In the depths of the ship, the quantum drive core pulsed weakly, its light growing dimmer with each passing moment. Time was running out, and their only hope now rested with a species that most of the galaxy considered barely capable of maintaining their own primitive machines. Tom Brady stepped through the airlock of the Stellar Dawn, carrying a worn metal toolbox that looked older than some of the alien crew members. His coveralls were stained with grease and oil, and his boots left small marks on the polished alien floor. Behind him came his team of 3 other humans, each carrying their own collection of simple tools that seemed almost primitive, compared to the glowing holographic displays and floating repair drones that filled the alien ship, the Saurid. Crew members who met them at the docking bay tried to hide their disgust, but Tom could see it in their yellow eyes. He had dealt with aliens before, and he knew what they thought of humans. Primitives. Barely civilized. Lucky to have stumbled into space travel at all. I am Chief Engineer Thex, said the tall crystal being, his voice echoing strangely in the metal corridor. Thank you for coming, though I must warn you that our problems are quite complex. We have been unable to solve them using our most advanced diagnostic systems. Tom nodded and adjusted his baseball cap. Well, let's take a look and see what we can do. As they walked through the ship toward the engine room, Tom noticed how everything around them was smooth and perfect. The walls were made of some kind of metal that seemed to glow from within. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing complex diagrams and numbers that changed constantly. Repair robots moved silently through the corridors, their mechanical arms extending and retracting as they performed maintenance tasks. It was impressive, Tom had to admit. But it was also completely foreign to him. He had learned to fix things by getting his hands dirty, by listening to engines and feeling vibrations. All of this floating technology and perfect cleanliness made him uncomfortable. The engine room was enormous, filled with towering machines that hummed with barely contained energy. The quantum drive core sat in the center like a giant crystal egg, pulsing with weak blue light. Around it, dozens of alien engineers worked frantically at holographic control panels, their faces showing confusion and frustration. The quantum drive is failing, Vex explained, gesturing at the massive machine. The energy patterns are completely wrong, but we cannot determine why. Our scanners show no damage. Our diagnostic programs find no errors. Yet the system continues to deteriorate. Tom walked up to the quantum drive and put his hand on its surface. The metal was warm, and he could feel a subtle vibration running through it. Several alien engineers stepped back in shock. Physical contact with the drive core was forbidden according to their safety protocols. How long has it been making that noise? Tom asked. Dex looked confused. What noise? Our audio sensors detect no unusual sounds. Tom closed his eyes and listened. Underneath the normal hum of the engine, he could hear something else. A tiny clicking sound, so faint that it was almost lost in the background noise. It came in irregular patterns, like a code being tapped out. "There," he said, pointing to a section of the drive housing. "Something's loose in there." "Impossible," said one of the Andromedan engineers, his large head turning toward Tom with obvious irritation. "We have scanned every component with quantum level precision. Nothing is loose or damaged." "What?" Tom shrugged and opened his toolbox. "Good." He pulled out a simple electronic device that looked like a small radio with wires attached to it. The aliens watched in amazement as he pressed the device against various parts of the drive housing, listening to the sounds it made through a pair of old-fashioned headphones. "What is that primitive device?" asked Thex. "Ultrasonic detector," Tom replied without looking up. "Picks up vibrations that human ears can't hear. Built it myself about 10 years ago." He moved the device along the housing, following the faint sounds only he seemed able to detect. "There. Right there." He pointed to a small access panel that looked identical to dozens of others covering the drive housing. Tom's team member, Lisa Park, came over with her own set of tools. She was a small woman with short black hair and hands that moved with practiced efficiency. "Want me to take a look?" she asked. Tom nodded, and Lisa began carefully removing the access panel. Dull. Alien engineers crowded around, their various forms of faces showing skepticism and curiosity. Inside the panel was a maze of cables and connectors, all perfectly arranged and color-coded. Lisa pulled out a small flashlight and peered into the cramped space. After a moment, she reached in with a pair of needle-nose pliers and gently pulled out a cable connector. "Here's your problem," she said, holding up the connector for everyone to see. "Microfracture in the housing. It's probably caused by vibration over time. Your sensors couldn't detect it because it's so small, but it's causing intermittent connection failures." The alien engineers stared at the tiny crack that Lisa pointed out with her fingernail. It was barely visible even under direct light, just a hairline split in the metal casing of the connector. "But how did you know to look there?" asked X, his crystal body flickering with confusion. "Experience," Tom said simply. "When you've fixed enough machines, you learn to recognize the patterns." That clicking sound meant something was making intermittent contact. The location of the sound told me roughly where to look. Lisa's got better eyes than me for close work. While Lisa began replacing the damaged connector with a spare part from their kit, Tom's other team members, Pete Rodriguez and Anna Williams, were exploring other parts of the engine room. Pete had found the ship's main coolant system and was checking the flow rates with a simple pressure gauge. "Hey Tom," Pete called out, "come look at this." Tom walked over to where Pete was kneeling beside a large pipe. Pete had removed an inspection cover and was peering inside with a small mirror attached to a flexible rod. "Coolant filter's clogged," Pete announced. "Probably been building up for months. That's why your thermal regulation is all wonky." An insectoid engineer scuttled over, her multiple eyes focused on Pete's simple inspection mirror. "Our sensors show perfect coolant flow throughout the system." "Your sensors are measuring flow rate," Pete explained patiently. "But if the filter's partially blocked, you get turbulence and uneven cooling. So total flow might be okay, but the distribution is wrong." He pulled his mirror out of the pipe and pointed to the residue on it. "See this buildup? Classic sign of particulate contamination." Anna was across the room examining a bank of power distribution panels. She had pulled out a device that looked like a simple electrical meter and was checking connections that the aliens had declared perfect. "It's found another one," she called out. "Corrosion on the main power bus. It's probably causing voltage fluctuations throughout the ship." As the humans worked, the alien crew watched in growing amazement. These primitive beings with their crude tools were finding problems that their sophisticated diagnostic systems had completely missed. More importantly, they were finding solutions. Within 4 hours, Tom's team had identified and fixed 7 different problems throughout the ship's systems. The quantum drive core began pulsing with steady, strong light. The warning alarms that had been constantly sounding finally fell silent. The ship's various systems began operating normally for the first time in days. Captain Korvath arrived in the engine room just as Tom was packing up his tools. The Sorid officer looked around at his functioning equipment with obvious relief, but also with something that might have been embarrassment. "How was all?" he said. Tom smiled and closed his toolbox. Sometimes the old ways work best, Captain. When you've got machines that are too smart for their own good, it helps to have people who still remember how to listen to what they're really trying to tell you. News traveled fast through the galactic communication networks. Within 2 weeks of the Stellar Dawn incident, every major news outlet in known space was reporting the same incredible story. A human repair team had fixed problems that the galaxy's most advanced engineers could not solve. The story spread from trading posts to military bases, from academic institutions to corporate boardrooms. At first, most aliens dismissed the reports as exaggerated human propaganda. Surely the problems on the Saurid warship had not been as serious as claimed. Perhaps the alien engineers had been too tired to think clearly. There had to be a reasonable explanation that did not involve primitive humans outperforming advanced galactic technology. But then more ships began arriving at human colonies, and the pattern became impossible to ignore. The first to arrive was a Centaurian exploration vessel called the Deep Survey. The Centaurians were known throughout the galaxy for their pride and their technological superiority. Their ships were works of art, perfectly designed and maintained to standards that other species could barely comprehend. When the Deep Survey limped into Earth's orbital shipyards with a failing navigation system, it sent shockwaves through the diplomatic community. Captain Veltar of the Centaurians was a tall, elegant being with silver skin and eyes like liquid mercury. He stood in the human repair bay looking deeply uncomfortable as he explained his problem to the yard supervisor, a middle-aged human woman named Carol Martinez. "Our quantum navigation array has been malfunctioning for 3 weeks," Veltar said, his voice carefully controlled. "Our shipboard computers cannot identify the source of the error. Our engineers have replaced every component twice. We have run complete diagnostic sweeps using the most advanced analysis programs in the galaxy." Carol nodded and made notes on a simple paper tablet. Around them, human workers were repairing dozens of different types of spacecraft, from cargo haulers to passenger liners. The noise was incredible compared to the silent perfection of Centaurian repair facilities. Tools clanged, people shouted instructions, and sparks flew from welding equipment. "When did the problem start?" Carol asked. "Immediately. After we emerged from hyperspace near the Vega system, the navigation display began showing impossible readings. Stars in the wrong positions, gravitational fields that do not exist, phantom objects that our other sensors cannot detect." Carol assigned the job to her best navigation specialist, a quiet man named Dave Chen, who had been working on spacecraft guidance systems for 25 years. Dave boarded the Centaurian ship with a toolkit that looked like it belonged in a museum compared to the glowing, floating diagnostic equipment used by the alien crew. The Centaurian navigation room was a wonder to behold. Holographic star maps filled the air, showing the positions of billions of celestial objects in perfect detail. Quantum processors calculated hyperspace routes with precision measured in fractions of seconds. Everything was clean, efficient, and utterly beautiful. Dave ignored all of it. Instead, he crawled underneath the main navigation console and began examining the physical wiring with a simple magnifying glass. The Centaurian engineers watched in horror as this primitive human touched their perfect technology with his bare hands. "The quantum field generators are operating at 99.7% efficiency," one of the engineers informed Dave. "All circuits show perfect continuity. Processing cores are running error-free diagnostics every microsecond." Dave grunted and continued his examination. After an hour, he found what he was looking for. A single wire, no thicker than a human hair, had been slightly damaged during the ship's last maintenance cycle. The damage was so minor that it did not affect normal electrical flow, but it created tiny electromagnetic pulses that interfered with the quantum navigation sensors. "There's your problem," Dave said, holding up the damaged wire. "Probably got nicked when someone replaced a component. Creates just enough interference to throw off your quantum readings." The Centaurian engineers stared at the wire in disbelief. Their diagnostic equipment had tested that exact wire hundreds of times and found nothing wrong. Yet when Dave replaced it with a standard spare part, the navigation system immediately began working perfectly. Word of Dave's success reached other alien species within days. The insectoid hive collective, despite their natural distrust of individual-based societies, quietly sent one of their biomechanical constructs to a human repair facility on Mars. The construct was a living machine, part organism and part technology, that had been malfunctioning for months. The human technician assigned to the job was a young woman named Rita Santos, who specialized in biological systems. Approached the alien construct with the same methodical care that Dave had shown with the Centaurian navigation system. While the hive's own engineers relied on complex chemical analysis and bioscanners, Rita simply observed the construct's behavior and listened to the sounds it made. She noticed that the construct's movements were slightly irregular, as if it was favoring one side. When she examined it more closely, she found that a cluster of biomechanical nerves had grown together incorrectly, creating a feedback loop that confused the construct's motor control system. A simple surgical separation, performed with basic medical tools, solved the problem completely. More ships arrived every day. A Galarian quantum computer that had been giving incorrect calculations for months was fixed by a human programmer who found a simple logic error that the alien debugging programs had missed. A massive lithoid mining operation came to a complete halt when their equipment failed, but human engineers restored it to full function using repair techniques that violated half the safety regulations in the Galactic Engineering Handbook. The stories multiplied across known space. Human mechanics were solving problems that had puzzled alien experts for years. They were using tools that most species considered obsolete, methods that seemed completely unscientific, and approaches that defied conventional wisdom. Yet they consistently succeeded where advanced alien technology failed. Galactic news. Networks began sending reporters to human colonies to document this phenomenon. They interviewed alien ship captains who sheepishly admitted that primitive human mechanics had saved their vessels. It filmed human repair crews working with simple hand tools alongside sophisticated alien diagnostic equipment. They tried to understand how beings with such basic technology could consistently outperform the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Dr. Kaller Voss, prominent Andromedan scientist, appeared on the most-watched news program in the galaxy to discuss what she called the human paradox. Her large bulbous head filled the screen as she addressed viewers across dozens of star systems. "We are witnessing something that challenges our fundamental understanding of technology and intelligence," Dr. Voss explained. "These humans, with their primitive tools and basic scientific knowledge, are consistently solving problems that our most sophisticated systems cannot handle. It forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about the nature of technological advancement." Implications were staggering. Humans could outperform alien technology in mechanical repairs. What else might they be capable of? Trade agreements began shifting as alien corporations realized that human expertise might be more valuable than human raw materials. Requests for human technical consultants flooded diplomatic channels. But perhaps the most significant change was in how other species viewed humanity itself. The primitive newcomers to galactic civilization were proving that advancement was not just about having the most sophisticated technology. Sometimes the most effective solutions came from the most unexpected sources, and the galaxy was beginning to take notice. Dr. Emma Volkov had always been fascinated by the differences between human and alien thinking. As Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, she had spent 15 years studying how different species approached problems and made decisions. But nothing in her research had prepared her for the phenomenon that was now sweeping across the galaxy. When the Andromedan Science Collective approached her to lead a joint investigation into human mechanical abilities, Emma knew this was the opportunity of a lifetime. Her research partner would be Dr. Cathrell, one of the most brilliant scientists in known space. The Andromedan's massive brain could process information at speeds that made human computers look slow, and his logical approach to research was legendary throughout the scientific community. Their first meeting took place on the neutral research station Harmony Point, located at the edge of human space. Cathrell towered over Emma, his bulbous head nearly touching the ceiling of the conference room. His large black eyes showed the kind of intense focus that had made his species the premier researchers in the galaxy. Dr. Volkov Kethrel said, in his precise mechanical voice, this human-mechanical phenomenon defies all logical analysis. My preliminary calculations suggest that primitive technology should be inferior to advanced systems in every measurable way. Yet the evidence clearly shows otherwise. I must determine why. Emma nodded and activated a holographic display showing their research plan. I propose we observe human repair teams working alongside alien engineers on actual problems we need to document exactly what humans do differently and why their methods are more effective. Over the next 6 months, Emma and Kethrel traveled to dozens of locations across human space. They watched human mechanics work on everything from simple cargo haulers to massive alien battleships. They recorded thousands of hours of video, conducted hundreds of interviews, and analyzed countless repair procedures. Their first major observation came at a repair facility on Luna Colony. A Sword transport ship had arrived with a malfunctioning artificial gravity system. The ship's own engineers had been working on the problem for weeks, using sophisticated diagnostic equipment that could analyze gravitational fields down to the quantum level. Emma and Kethrel watched as the human mechanic, assigned to the job, an older man named Frank Torres, completely ignored the alien diagnostic displays. Instead, he walked slowly through the ship's corridors, occasionally stopping to bounce a small rubber ball off the walls and floor. "What is he doing?" Kethrel asked, his voice filled with confusion. Emma was recording everything on her tablet. "He's testing the gravity field variations by observing how the ball behaves in different areas." The Sword engineers protested that their equipment showed perfectly uniform gravity throughout the ship. But Frank's simple ball test revealed subtle variations that the sophisticated sensors had missed. Within 2 hours, he had located a failing gravity generator that was creating microscopic fluctuations in the field. The alien equipment was measuring average gravitational strength, Emma explained to Kethrel later. But it wasn't designed to detect the kind of irregular patterns that Frank's ball test revealed. His method was crude, but it was also more sensitive to the actual problem. Their second major discovery came at Earth's orbital shipyards, where they observed a human team working on a Centaurian vessel with engine trouble. The alien engineers had spent days analyzing computer readouts and running diagnostic programs. The human team leader, a woman named Susan Park, took a completely different approach. She gathered her team around the engine and had them all listen to the sounds it made. Then she asked each person to describe what they heard. One person mentioned a faint whistling sound. Another noticed an irregular vibration. A third detected a smell that reminded him of burning plastic. They're using their biological senses to gather information, Kethrel observed. But how can primitive organic sensors compete with advanced electronic detection equipment? Emma was taking notes furiously. The electronic sensors are designed to detect specific expected problems, but the human senses can pick up unexpected patterns and combinations of signals that the equipment isn't programmed to recognize. Susan's team found the problem by following the combination of sounds, vibrations, and smells to a small component that was overheating due to improper installation. The alien diagnostic equipment had tested the component individually and found it working perfectly, but it had never considered how the component's placement affected its interaction with surrounding systems. As their investigation continued, Emma and Kethrel began to understand the fundamental difference between human and alien approaches to problem solving. The aliens had developed incredibly sophisticated tools and systems, but they had also become dependent on them. Their diagnostic equipment was designed based on their existing knowledge of how things should work. When faced with problems that fell outside those parameters, the systems failed to provide answers. Humans, on the other hand, still maintained a direct relationship with their technology. They were comfortable getting their hands dirty, using multiple senses to gather information, and thinking creatively about solutions. Most importantly, they were willing to consider possibilities that their equipment hadn't been programmed to detect. At a research facility on Mars, they observed the most striking example yet. Jalarian quantum computer had been giving incorrect calculations for months. The Jalarian engineers had run every diagnostic program they possessed, placed every component multiple times, and even rebuilt entire sections of the computer from scratch. Nothing worked. The human programmer assigned to the problem was a young man named Alex Wilson, who had learned his skills fixing old Earth computers that were held together with spare parts and creative programming. Alex spent 3 days simply watching the quantum computer work, taking notes on paper with an old-fashioned pencil. "What patterns do you see?" Emma asked him during one of their interviews. "It's not what I see," Alex replied. "It's what I don't see. This computer is trying to be too perfect." Every calculation goes through 17 different verification systems before it produces a result. But one of those verification systems has a tiny logical flaw that introduces errors under very specific conditions. The Galarian diagnostic. Programs had tested each verification system individually and found them all working correctly, but they had never considered that the interaction between systems might create problems that didn't exist in any single component. Alex's solution was brilliantly simple. He disabled the flawed verification system and adjusted the other systems to compensate. The quantum computer immediately began producing accurate results for the first time in months. "The alien approach is systematic and thorough," Emma explained to Cathrell as they compiled their research, "but it's also rigid. When they encounter problems that don't fit their systematic approach, they can't adapt. Humans are more flexible. They're willing to try unconventional solutions and think outside established parameters." Cathrell processed this information with the calculating precision that made his species such excellent scientists. "You are suggesting that technological advancement may actually limit problem-solving ability in certain circumstances?" "Exactly," Emma said. "The more sophisticated the diagnostic tools become, the more they constrain thinking to predetermined possibilities. Humans have maintained their ability to think beyond those constraints because their technology isn't sophisticated enough to do all their thinking for them." Their final report sent shockwaves through the scientific community. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations had not just been outperformed by primitive humans, they had been outperformed because their technology was too advanced. Their sophisticated systems had created a barrier between the user and the problem. While human simplicity had maintained the direct connection that made creative solutions possible, the implications were staggering. And they would change how every species in the galaxy thought about technology, intelligence, and the true meaning of advancement. The publication of Dr. Emma Volkov and Dr. Cathrell's research report created chaos throughout the galaxy. Within hours of its release, government officials, military commanders, and corporate executives across dozens of star systems were demanding explanations from their top scientists and engineers. The report's conclusion was as simple as it was shocking. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations had actually become worse at solving problems because their technology was too good. On the Andromedan homeworld, the Supreme Science Council held an emergency session that lasted for 3 days. Dr. Kethmer, Council's eldest member, stood before the assembled scientists with the research report projected above his massive head. His voice carried the weight of centuries as he addressed the room. "For 2,000 years, we have believed that technological advancement was the path to perfection," Dr. Kethmer said. "We have created machines that think faster than we do, sensors that detect things we cannot perceive, and diagnostic systems that analyze problems with precision beyond our imagination. Yet according to this report, these achievements have made us less capable, not more." The council chamber erupted in debate. Some scientists refused to accept the findings, arguing that human success was simply a statistical anomaly. Others demanded immediate changes to their educational and technological systems. But the evidence was undeniable. Human mechanics were consistently outperforming Andromedan engineers who had access to technology that was thousands of years more advanced. Similar debates were happening across the galaxy. On the Saurid homeworld, military leaders gathered to discuss the implications for their fleet maintenance programs. Captain Korvath, whose ship had been saved by human mechanics, spoke to the assembled officers about his experience. "Commanded warships for 30 years, Korvath said, his scaled face showing the strain of recent events. "I believed that our technology made us superior to all other species. But when our most advanced systems failed, it was primitive human tools and thinking that saved us. We must accept that there are things our machines cannot teach us. The Centaurian Republic, known throughout the galaxy for their pride and technological superiority, faced perhaps the greatest challenge to their worldview. Their entire culture was built around the belief that perfect technology led to perfect solutions. The idea that their sophisticated systems might actually be limiting their abilities was almost too much to accept. Emperor Zalvith called a meeting of the Republic's top engineers and scientists. The gleaming conference room on the capital world was filled with the most brilliant minds in Centaurian space, their silver skin reflecting the light from holographic displays that showed the human research data. Explain to me how beings who have barely mastered space travel can outperform our finest engineers. The Emperor demanded. Chief Engineer Valthan, who had overseen the construction of the Republic's most advanced starships, struggled to find words. Your Majesty, the humans do not follow established procedures. They use crude tools and rely on biological senses that our equipment has replaced. Yet somehow this primitive approach allows them to detect problems that our systems miss.
Ow.
Emperor's mercury-like eyes narrowed. You telling me that our technology is inferior to human tools that belong in a museum? Not inferior. Your Majesty, different. Our technology is designed to find expected problems using known methods. The humans are not constrained by these limitations. They can consider possibilities that our systems are not programmed to recognize. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place. The report had forced every advanced civilization to confront an uncomfortable truth about their own development. They had become so dependent on their sophisticated technology that they had lost the ability to think creatively about problems. The first species to take action was, surprisingly, the insectoid hive collective. Despite their natural resistance to change, collectives' shared consciousness quickly accepted the research findings and began implementing solutions. Within weeks, they established exchange programs with human colonies, sending their best engineers to learn primitive diagnostic techniques. Queen Mind Zareth, speaking for the entire collective, made an unprecedented announcement. The Hive acknowledges that advancement is not always found in complexity. We will learn from human simplicity to strengthen our technological capabilities. The Andromedon Science Collective followed soon after, completely restructuring their educational programs to include hands-on mechanical training. Students who had spent years learning to operate sophisticated diagnostic equipment were now required to spend equal time working with basic tools and developing their natural observation skills. Dr. Cathrell himself became one of the most vocal advocates for change. His massive brain, which had once focused solely on logical analysis, now worked to understand the value of intuition and creative thinking. He established the first interspecies engineering program, where alien students worked alongside human mechanics to learn techniques that could not be programmed into any computer. The changes went far beyond education and training. Major corporations began hiring human consultants to review their automated systems and identify potential blind spots. Military forces restructured their maintenance protocols to include human-style observation methods alongside their traditional diagnostic procedures. Even the most advanced artificial intelligence systems were modified to consider unconventional possibilities that had previously been dismissed as illogical. But perhaps the most significant change was in how humanity was perceived throughout the galaxy. Species that had once been dismissed as primitive newcomers were now recognized as possessing unique cognitive abilities that made them invaluable partners. Human technical schools found themselves flooded with applications from alien students, eager to learn inefficient methods that somehow produced superior results. Trade agreements shifted dramatically as alien governments realized that human expertise was far more valuable than human raw materials. Diplomatic relationships changed as species that had barely tolerated human presence now actively sought human partnerships. The balance of power in the galaxy began to shift as humanity's perceived weaknesses revealed themselves to be unexpected. Strengths. Tom Brady, the gruff mechanic who had started it all by fixing the stellar dawn, found himself at the center of this galactic transformation. Standing in his small repair shop on New Haven Station, he was surrounded by representatives from a dozen different species, all eager to learn his methods. The irony was not lost on him. The galaxy had spent millennia perfecting machines that could think while humans had remained connected to machines that needed thinking done for them. Now the most advanced civilizations in known space were sending their best engineers to learn from a man whose most sophisticated diagnostic tool was a device he had built in his garage. The funny thing is, Tom said to a group of visiting Andromedon, "Students, we never thought we were doing anything special. We just fixed things the way they needed to be fixed. Sometimes the best solution isn't the most complicated one." As he spoke, the lights of New Haven Station reflected off the hulls of dozens of alien ships waiting for repairs. The queue stretched for weeks, filled with vessels from every corner of the galaxy. Word had spread that human mechanics could solve problems that no one else could handle, and the universe had taken notice. The galaxy had learned that advancement was not just about building better machines, but about maintaining the human connection that made those machines truly useful. In a universe filled with perfect technology, sometimes the most valuable tool was an imperfect mind that could see beyond the limitations of perfection itself.